Now to Ukraine, and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has said the goal of his country's incursion into Russia is to create a buffer zone to protect against further Russian attacks. His statement echoes Putin's claims, the Russian President Vladimir Putin's claims about Russia's offensive in the Kharkiv region in the spring. Here's a closer look at Ukraine's first major campaign across the Russian border and the possible strategy behind it.
Ukrainian soldiers fighting in Kursk, trying to take new territory and to hold on to what they've gained already. Ukraine says it wants a buffer zone, territory that Russia needs to cross over if it wants to attack. This is the territory Ukraine claims to have seized in the Kursk region. It says more than 1,000 square kilometers, but that's just 3% of the overall region. Russia says it's evacuated more than 120,000 people from their homes. About 1 million people live in Greater Kursk, which is mainly agricultural. So what does Kursk have that Ukraine wants? For one thing, there's a major airbase, still well outside of Ukraine's area of control, but much closer to its range-limited missiles. Russia uses this base to launch attacks on Ukrainian soil, and taking it out would be a major gain. Russia also uses Kursk to send troops and equipment into Ukraine. Taking the territory and blowing up bridges, as Ukraine did over the weekend and on Monday, makes it much harder for Moscow to deliver men and supplies where they're needed. Ukraine says it isn't trying to take Russia's territory in order to occupy or exploit it. But if Ukraine wants a buffer, it needs to hold the land it's conquered. It's already started placing mines to defend what it's taken. And Russia has started to build more fortifications and dig trenches within its own territory to contain the Ukrainian advance. The further Ukraine pushes the Russians away, the bigger the buffer zone, and the harder it is for Russia to attack Ukrainian territory.
Let's get some analysis now from Marina Miron. She's a military expert at the War Studies Department at King's College London. Good to see you again. What military advantages does Ukraine expect to gain, would you say, by creating a buffer zone on Russian soil?
Good morning, Kerry. Well, there are a couple of military aims that Ukraine pursued, and it's probably not so much the creation of a buffer zone, but more importantly, drawing Russian forces away from the Donbass, where Ukrainian forces are critical. And as far as a buffer zone is concerned, if we look at the map, we need to understand that in order to create that buffer zone, in order to prevent potential Russian attacks on the Sumy region, which we have heard about 2 months ago, there were speculations that the Russians would continue their Kharkiv offensive and expand to Sumy. Ukraine would need to control more territory and establish better logistics, and it would need to control at least Kornevo, Lvov, and Rilsk, which Ukraine doesn't control, or maybe the city of Kursk. And it's still too far away. Ukraine doesn't seem to have the momentum right now, so the operational tempo has slowed down. However, this small territory that Ukraine has right now, is it going to make a difference in the grander scheme of things in terms of preventing the Russians from operating efficiently? I don't think so.
Well, Ukraine's advance in Kursk must also tie up a lot of Ukrainian resources. Why not use those resources to defend the eastern territory, say, of Pokrovsk, where Russia is continuing to make gains?
It's a difficult situation for Ukraine and for Ukrainian command, for military command, because on the one hand, Ukraine lacks manpower. On the other hand, Ukraine lacks equipment. And with a political uncertainty in the global sphere, especially with the upcoming US elections, and the fact that Ukraine has been suffering setbacks, the Ukrainian side had to do something, because getting supplies from Western partners is very, very uncertain for Ukraine, meaning that it hampers operational planning. And so this is a way of a gamble to achieve a specific media effect on the one hand, to boost the morale of Ukrainian troops and maybe show the population that it's worth joining the ranks because there are issues with recruitment of personnel. And also the potential of using this territory during peace negotiations with Russia, where Ukraine would have then a stronger position if it can hold that territory. Now, that strategic gamble comes at a price where Russia didn't fall into that trap, or at least as of yet, and didn't redeploy the troops from those locations in the Donbass, such as Chasiv Yar, such as Toretsk, Pokrovsk, to Kursk. And therefore, now we have that problem in the Donbass, where Ukrainian troops are outgunned and understaffed. They are evacuating population from Pokrovsk, and the Russians are pushing further. New York has allegedly already fallen. Toretsk might be the next. The Russians have entered Toretsk, and those are all important logistical hubs for the Ukrainian forces, meaning that there is a chance that while the best equipped and best trained units are tied down in Kursk, the Russians could potentially take those cities and bring the front south of Pokrovsk to a collapse.
Marina, thank you so much for your observations there. That was Marina Miron from King's College London.
Thank you for having me.